NG talent update. Welcome back to another Bit Legend video. Got a lot of stuff to film today, so we're going to jump right into it. So we are looking at the picture that shows the passive NG tank here, but the talents are going to be the same. You can find this picture and the unedited picture, the unchanged picture in the Discord in the talents channel. The reason why I decided to use the passive NG tank picture instead of just a clean one is because I want to show context to a build that people were using. It was not very popular. It was viable, but it wasn't very popular. And instead of just showing and talking about the updates without really giving an example, giving context of how things were being used, wouldn't be the best way to do it. So we're gonna run through the changes, and then I'll try to theorycraft a little bit, not a lot, but a little bit on what people would use in the future. And this is not going to be just tank focus. This is going to talk about all of the NG changes. So first things first, life support device in the top. I can't make it any bigger resolution than I have right now, but life support device was changed from 5% max to 10% max hit points. You'll see that it was not used in my tank build. And my biggest criticism of the NG talents is that it splits the talents into 3 lanes. And obviously each profession has 3 different lines, but what you don't see in the other professions is usually the other professions, they put all the tank talents in 2 lines. They put all of the DPS talents in 2 lines. That way you're not really spread amongst 3, or if you are, you're not spread so deep. And that was my criticism of this one. So maybe we'll see that change a little bit as far as maybe people will prefer these top tank talents, but let's keep going. Energy refraction, you'll find it in the middle of the screen, was changed. The shield generating by energy refraction was increased from 5% to 15%. So when dealing damage, restores extra 15% of shielding for yourself and another random ally. I don't think this is going to have value for a tank because you're just not getting enough turns in, you're not doing enough damage. If you're doing almost nothing in damage, then 15% of nothing isn't going to be anything. However, for DPS players, this might be interesting. That way you're dealing damage like you ordinarily would, however, you're getting some shield team for your ally, so you're starting to get a little bit of support tacked onto your DPS output. So for a DPS player, that's a little bit interesting. The SP consumption of anti-power armor, that is the ultimate ability that you see in the top line. The SP consumption has been decreased from 40, which is 4 pips, to 20, which is 2. And you can use it 2 times per battle, so that will be fairly significant. Let's read it. Target ally gains anti-power armor, increases their absorb by 100%, takes 3 attacks damage, and increase the converting of the absorbed shield. Okay, kind of weird. You can buff an ally, they absorb 3 times, and they get more shielding out of it. So while this sounds kind of cool on paper, the problem is this. The defense of this is cool. You absorb 3 times. That means you're not going to be able to get killed in 3 hits. However, when it says you're getting extra shielding out of this, extra absorb, the damage in the game is so high that almost any attack whatsoever will give you full shields on a tank. Now, if you look in the NG line, if you look at incremental shield, where they increase the upper limit of the shield, ordinarily without any special talents, it caps at 50% of the hit points. This can get it up to 100%, so maybe you'll see some value there. I actually still think it'll be overcapped. But they reduced the cost of this skill, which is incredibly important. It was too costly to even consider using, and then now they have made it so you can use it twice. So that's interesting. We might see some sort of synergy here on Guild Boss 5, whereas you might have an NG who's supporting your tank if they're getting wrecked or something. I'm very curious to see how the autopilot would use this, because the autopilot is not very intelligent. And so this might just be used randomly. It might not be used at all. Or that's something that testing is the only way to find that answer. Moving on, front defense. So we're going down to the second line, And then we are looking at the second column, the second line. So it used to give 10% block. It will now give 15% block. That makes sense because you have other block talents such as automatic defense in the bottom line giving 10%, but this is in the second column, so it should be stronger than a previous talent. So we're getting a little bit more block there. That's kind of cool. That means now NG can get 25% block. So that's pretty beefy. 25% block plus a max Libra. I mean, you've already capped block right there without any other items. So just keep that in mind for you blocky boys out there. Index resonance. Let's see that one. Okay, right in the middle of the second line, index resonance. When using any SP skill, you get a 50% chance to restore 2 pips or 20 SP for a random ally whose SP is not full. That is being upgraded from 50% to 75%. I think they could actually probably make this 100%, but I actually like what the dev is doing. Instead of doing massive buffs and massive nerfs very clumsily, they're kind of shaving things and adding a reasonable amount here. I don't want to see them coming out with a big old nerf hammer. I want to see them come out with like a scalpel, and I think we're seeing that a little bit, but room for improvement. Again, testing is going to be interesting here. A lot of people are really dreaming of an NG build that has support, that's giving SP to allies, that's giving shielding to allies, that's doing other interesting things, buffs and debuffs. And I think we're starting to see the beginning of that emerge out of here. Let me just double check. Make sure I'm not getting lost. Okay, quantization. When each round starts, there is a chance to recover, 70% chance to recover 1 pip of SP. When it maxes out, they're going to move it from 70% to 100%. So you're getting 1 SP when the round starts, which is kind of interesting because if you look at the Bounty Hunter, and there will be a Bounty Hunter video, there is a talent in the second column that gives 2 SP when the round starts, and that's going to be nerfed down just a little bit. But this is a talent in the 4th column. It's a talent in the 4th column, and it still gives less than the Bounty Hunter talent that's in the 2nd column. That doesn't make any sense. If anything, this should give 2 SP per turn. You know, I'm not arguing so much for Bounty Hunter getting a nerf, but again, we'll talk about a Bounty Hunter when we get there. But this is a talent in the 4th column, and it's still inferior to a talent in the 2nd column. So that needs to be looked at. Yeah, there's no way to hack it. So it's good, like I said, it's good that they're using a scalpel and not a hammer here, but I don't understand that one. Super algorithm, the ultimate ability here. SP consumption decreased from 40 to 20, so they cut the SP cost in half. The damage and critical hit increased from 50% to 75%, and the number of uses increased from 1 time to 2 times. So very interesting. Again, this was another NG skill that cost a full bar of SP. It was too expensive to ever even justify using it. Now, it's a lot more usable. You're increasing their attack and their crit by 75%. But let's look at this in a realistic scenario. Almost every DPS player except for, all of them, even whether they're a hunter or whether they're not a hunter, most of them run a ton of crit already. Most of these guys are running, and the low end, it's in the 60%. You got people 70, 80%, whatever. So giving these guys a ton of crit chance is not as good as it looks. And then, And then again, we're kind of curious on how the autopilot's going to use this. Is the autopilot just going to throw this on your tank randomly? Is he just going to use it, not use it? I don't know. Again, testing is going to make that more interesting. But I think what they could do, instead of adding a ton of crit, they could cut crit in half and then add some crit damage on here, and we see some crazy stuff going on. But then again, I would be concerned about getting reflected, but it just depends on what you're running. If we're talking about a guild boss that doesn't have reflect, this might be juicy, but this is going to shine in content where you're using multiple players. So when Guild Boss 5 comes out and you're using multiple guildies, I think that's where the NG is really going to shine. He's going to start trying to use some of these to support his team. But what I've always said about support classes is 1 + 1 can't equal 2. 1 + 1 has to equal 3. So if you have the choice of a DPS character and a support character, they have to have the synergy that makes it better than running just 2 DPS characters. Because with 2 DPS characters, I don't have to worry about how the autopilot's going to use a buff or how the autopilot's going to use these different skills. So that's the uphill battle. But if it turns out that the NG is pumping out a ton of SP for everybody, Bounty Hunter has been nerfed a little bit as far as the SP gain, so there might be a space for that. I could see NGs with a ton of speed, a ton of agility stat, getting a lot of turns and pumping a bunch of SP into other people, as you see with the Index Resonance ability. And let's see, where are we at? So Index Resonance got buffed. I think you get more. Talked about that one. Virus Attack. So that means we're going down to the bottom line. I hope this resolution is big enough for you guys. I mean, if I can read it on my phone, I feel like we can handle it. At the bottom of the last line, Virus Attack, damage increased from 20% to 25%, and the number of targets hit increased from 2 to 3. So when taking first action, deals now 25% of hit point limit damage. I think that means just 25% of max hit points to 2 random enemies with full hit points, reduces their speed by 10%. And the speed debuff lasts the entire fight. Let's be clear on that. That's what it was. At least that's what was stated by the dev. The speed debuff lasts the entire fight. This is something interesting. It sounds really good for something like a guild boss. However, the way it's written is that, no, maybe they changed it. It used to say that the enemy had to be full hit points, but now it says when taking the first action. No, yeah, it still says it. What I'm hung up on is it says to 2 random enemies with full hit points. Unless you're the very first person in your guild to hit the guild boss will not be full hit points. So does that make this entire talent useless in guild boss? That's the way it looks. And if you're saying, well, maybe it'll help in raids and in world boss. In world boss, I don't think it's significant enough. I think if you got appropriate gear, world boss is not your problem. And we could see world bosses get more difficult in the future. But as far as like raid 6, it would be nice. Yeah, I could see using that. If you have, like I said, you do the speed build with the NG, ton of speed stat, ton of agility stat. You could maybe with like the healer set, you're getting some speed on that too, I think. You could probably get this off first, and hopefully it would hit the boss. Again, that's something that's going to need to be tested. Very curious. Also, if you have more than one NG that has this skill, since it says the enemy must have full hit points, I guess that's not going to work. So you're already kind of carving out like one NG spot if it is going to have more output than a DPS. So, very curious. We could see this go somewhere. Obviously, the reason why it said they want an enemy with full hit points, that way you can't just stack like 3 NGs and just chunk the boss down to almost nothing. And if you are a coordinated guild, if this does work on guild boss, you could just wait, have your NG hit each boss first, and they would chunk off that massive percentage. It would take coordination, and it'd have to be tested. If anybody can do this and film this, I would love to see it, if this has even been functional against guild boss. Because, I mean, just imagine one attack, you're chunking off 25%. So, like I said, gonna need testing. And we're almost done with NG. Firewall. So if we look over in the 4th column, Firewall increases the speed. So it used to give 2.5%. It'll now give 5%. So this will further support the idea of an NG speed build. So that's kind of nice. And then you're also getting some elemental resistance for it. And then for the couple tanks that end up picking this up for the resistance, you're not going to shake a stick at having a little bit extra speed. That's kind of nice. And then the last thing about the NG, System Invasion, the last ultimate ability. The SP was cut in half, so instead of a full bar, you're going to have half. The damage reduction effect is increased from 30% to 45%, and the use times are increased twice. So that was a long way to say they cut the SP in half, they increased the damage reduction, and you can use it twice. So it reduces enemies' attack and damage, their crit, their strike, their dodge, deflect, absorb, So this is pretty cool. I could see this being the sole reason why every team is going to want one NG for like Guild Boss 5 when it comes out. So you have your NG, he's got a ton of speed, he's putting out SP, he's kind of covering the bases a little bit. And then if you have a boss that just has ridiculous offense or defensive abilities, this turns it off, and you can do it twice, so for 2 actions. And if you think about it, the boss's attack relatively slow compared to the player. Like, my tank has almost no speed and agility, and he still gets a couple attacks before the boss does. So theoretically, if you spread this out and use it intelligently, you could really mitigate a ton of boss stuff. And this might be the secret sauce for Guild Boss 5 when it comes out. We don't know how many teams we'll have in Guild Boss 5. We don't know how many people per team or how many guildies per team we can do. I'm hoping it's three teams of 5. I think that would be cool because that's 15 players. So you're using half your guild. It would be cool like that, but we'll have to wait and see when Guild Boss 5 is announced, because it is currently still in the works. So let's wrap this relatively long video up. Putting things together, how would I change the tank build? Did they add enough tanky things to make me want to change this and go and get the incremental shield and go and get the absorb and all those kind of talents? I don't know, man. It's always been difficult to put together a good NG build just because everything is spread out in 3 lines. You got tank stuff spread over 3 lines. You've got supporty kind of stuff spread over 3 lines. And I still think to make NG shine, you've got to kind of hammer out and say, okay, these 2 lines are going to focus on tank. These 2 lines are going to focus on support. These, and just do it that way. So that's the wrap. If anybody can put together a compelling NG build, tank, support, DPS, whatever, and you just want to do a little picture like this, feel free to let me know. I can put it in the talent channel and pin it up. If nobody gets to it before I do, I'll probably try to come through here, put some thought into it, and see what I would or wouldn't change about this. I still think if you like the old passive NG build, I still think it's going to work for you. I don't know if you can do like a support tank hybrid. Maybe if you have completely maxed out your total stats, you got like all set pieces and stuff, you'll have enough stat points to put in enough agility and speed and stuff like that to get enough turns in to make it work, because that would be kind of cool if your tank could be the one using system invasion. That's interesting. Well, time to go film some other talent videos. As always, appreciate you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.